So last day we were going through networking, and by networking I meant was we, yeah, my screen is visible, I guess. Yeah. So we were looking into VPCs, and then we also worked into setting up our subnets, and then we also worked into setting up our firewalls, and also we took a particular use case where we did not our instance was not able to do an SSH, and we tried to solve that by our using our firewall rules, right? So that is what we were looking into last day, and but today, once, yeah, but today we will be looking into some other features of VPC that stands to be. Okay. So we will look into the some other features of VPC. Maybe of the first would be VPC peering, right? So what do I mean by VPC peering is that, let's say I have a VPC and I have a EC2 instance or a VM, not EC2, a VM running in that instance. So the EC and I have a VPC B. Okay, let me go to the boards, that would make it easier. Okay, so I have, let's say, a VPC A, and it has a VM of below it, it has a VM of X, and correspondingly some other I have in my same project another VPC which is having which is termed as VPC B, and it has a VM Y. And just a pointer, these are part of the same project, right? Because you know that when we are using VPCs, the project, I won't say VPC, when we are using GCP, we have a dedicated structure that we need to follow while we are setting up our accounts, right? It is the organization, then it is the folder, and then it is the projects, right? So let's now take the example of projects over here. Okay, so these are under a same project of, let's say, A, B, C. So can you tell me whether my VM X will be able to communicate with my VM Y if this is the hierarchy that we are following? Anyone? Yes, no, maybe.
Because in the same project, okay, it's not possible, right?
Sorry, if it is in the,
No, same project or different project, right? Okay, it is possible, right?
no. Okay, so you are saying if my VM X will be able to communicate with VM Y, is that what you are saying?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Any other thoughts by anyone else? Okay.
If it's in the different project, gateway should be there to communicate.
Different project.
Okay. There's another term you are saying, gateway. Okay.
Just like you used to have NAT gateways in AWS.
Other
Okay.
ones, okay, we need to connect with account to account level as well, Akash. Okay, for example, okay, VPCA is my account. Okay, VPCB is the different account. Means, okay, that also we can make account to account.
Okay.
That is
Okay.
for the
So I have
organization level.
okay. Okay. So I have couple of answers. So I'll go one by one. So first is you answered that it will, if it is under the same project, it will be able to communicate. So that answer would be no. So VPC A and resources under it will not be able to communicate with VPC B even if it is under the same project. Okay. The second answer which I got is using a internet gateway, a gateway in it was the prospect of that answer, right? So gateways is not responsible for the communication between VPCs. Okay, gateway, I'll talk about it. There is only one major gateway that is there in GCP. We name it as the Internet Gateway, and the function of Internet Gateway is to use it for your communication from your internal VPC to the external world, right? So you'll be getting, means when we'll be having an external IP address, at that point you will be leveraging the internet gateways to take your traffic outside to the internet. Okay, so that is on the gateway part. And yes, the third answer is a partial correct answer. So you said that we can communicate with organization to organization. Yes, that is possible, and that is what we are discussing in this one. Is we talk about that strategy known as VPC peering, right? So VPC peering helps us for our resources that is constituted in one VPC to communicate with the other VPC that can remain either in the same project or a project sitting in a different organization, right? So this is what VPC pairing helps us to achieve. You are with me on this? So we'll see some
Yes.
quick, okay, you understood, right? So we'll see some quick definitions because that's also important. And then we will move into the practicals. I'll show you a scenario and then that will help. Why. Okay. So what is VPC peering? I already told you. If the network is its a definition, it networks in the same project, different project, and across projects in different organization can be peered, right? So that is what the basic definition of VPC peering is, right? So in simple terms, if the network is in your same project, then also you, if you make the communication happen, you have to communicate, means you have to peer your VPCs. Otherwise VPC A is isolated from VPC B. Okay, that's one part to the equation, and it also supports the way between different organizations, right? Apart from that, what the traffic, the advantage, what is the advantage of doing that is that your communication is highly secured, right? Means it will, means even if you are doing a cross organization peering, the communication does not access the internet, right? It does stay isolated, and that happens inside your Google network, right? Means they communicate only via your private IPs. Okay, that's, these are the two major advantages that you get to do peering. Otherwise, what the second answer which I got is, you could have used a gateway, right? But what disadvantage is, your communication goes out of your Google network, and instead of using private IPs, it goes into using external IPs. It goes to the outside internet network, and again from your internet network, it again can come to the other resources sitting in other VPCs. So that is a way of security measures that you again externally have to follow if you are using external IPs and gateways to communicate, right? So this is the advantage of using VPC peering. Another most effective advantage in terms of cost would be, if you are using internal IPs, there is no data transfer charges, right? But if you have used, you are giving examples of AWS, so you know that when you are using external IPs that do charge you, when you, the egress traffic that goes out of a public using a public IP address from your VPC will cost you charges, right? But if you're using internal IPs for the communication, there is no data transfer charges. Okay. And just a pointer to remember is, this is related to your IAMs. When we talk about deeply on IAM, we will look into it. But you, as you have used AWS, so I think you might know the generic terms, is that admin of one VPC do not get the role automatically in a peered network. What do I mean by this is, let's say I have the VPC A and there is a network admin IAM role given to a person or a user in that VPC or in that project. He or she does not have the, again, the admin privileges in VPC B, right? So he cannot see what is the configurations done in VPC B. He or she, the admin of that VPC, is only isolated or is only fragmented with its privileges into that VPC only, right? So this is what the VPC peering is about. Okay. I just see one thing is I see a couple of new persons who have joined, uh, Chandrasekhar and Dishant, right? So just a quick thing. You people are aware or you have joined back earlier, or is this your first class? People who have joined in new.
No, this is the first class.
Okay. And what about Chandrasekhar? Okay, that's fine. So, actually, we are discussing about because we have come a bit into the journey, right? So, we were discussing about the GCP networking. So, we have started initially with VPCs, and then we talk about subnets in our previous classes, and then on firewalls. And today we were talking about VPC peering, right? Just to give you a background of what we are discussing today. So if you want to look back to our earlier classes, you can reach out to the admin team. I guess the sessions are recorded. So you can go a bit on those recordings. And if you have any doubts, yeah, you can come up with your doubts in the corresponding next classes, right? Yeah. So just moving along. So what is the problem that it is this VPC peering is solving? I have to have uh, I can show you first, and then that will give you that clarity, right? Just let me share a separate account. Okay, is my screen visible, guys? Yes, no, maybe. Quickly. We won't take much time into these things. My screen is visible, right, guys?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay. So I have, let's say, three VPCs. This is my demo account. Okay. So I have three VPCs, right? The default we have already talked about. This GCP does give you initially when you start or log in into a GCP. That's a default account and it default VPC, and it is created on a auto mode, right? Auto mode means GCP will create mostly all your subnets in all the regions. So I have done a bit of modifications. That is the reason why it is showing 9 for me. I have removed the subnets which I will never be using. So we can do customization on that. So I have done a bit, and I have also created a test VPC that's also on auto, and a v- VPC on named as ABC, and that's custom, right? And it is sitting on a region of, I guess, Dallas. Just let's check the region. It is US South 1. Okay. Now I'll just quickly spin up a few VMs, right? Let's go to compute engines, create instance. Instance. So what I am doing is I'll create two instances. So one will be hosted in my default VPC. So from where to can I change that? So I've not talked about compute engine on a higher level. So this is I'm taking just to show you the examples and the use case. So when you're spinning up your compute engine and how to change your network addresses, if you have joined in new and not in the last class, you go into your advanced settings, and then from there into networking. From there, you have to go to the network interface, and here is where you can select your uh, the VPC that you want to use, and corresponding subnets does get attached to it uh, when you select the VPC. I'll just do one changes. I'll just change my box, right? It does cost a lot. Let's get this created, and also I'll create a second VPC instance VPC ABC. So this would sit onto my ABC VPC. So this ABC VPC is sitting on the subnet region of US South 1. So we have to select the same region. Zone can be anything. You can select one in 3 zones. That's fine. Again, I'll just quickly small. And the most important part is I'll change the networking. Is my voice coming to you guys, right?
Yeah, it's audible.
Okay. So ABC VPC, and as I told you, it does correspondingly takes up the subnet address. Okay, let's go ahead and create it. So I'll answer to couple of answers that we gave right while we are talking about why and how VPC peering was required. Okay, so let's log into one SSH. Okay, right, that's great. Okay, so I've just quickly logged into my default box. So name I. So if you can see the internal IP address is 10.128.0.3, right? So now if I go back and show you, so this is 10.128.0.3, right? So it's the same box which is running on my default VPC, right? So now if I try to do a ping or I try to establish a connection between this to the other instances that we have spinned up on the second VPC, does that communication establish? So that is our first point of check, right? So let's say you got a use case that, hey, we want these two boxes to communicate with each other, right? So first let's see whether that is possible or not. Is it weird for me? Ah, I was doing a use case. Okay, very sorry. I have that beard. Okay, just one thing before this gets deleted, just wanted to show you. Someone was saying about the gateways, right? So internet gateway is not a separate component over here in GCPs, right? If you search also, you might not get that. Okay. Okay, so there is no such separate component that you see on AWS known as internet gateway. So here there is an internet gateway. So if I first show you for the ABC subnet, if I go in and if you go to your right hand side, there is a route. Where is that? Yeah. So here it is that first you need to understand uh, for whether those instances does have a external IP or an internal IP, right? So let's go to my instance. So my instance default has an external IP. Okay. So that is the first point of check to take your communication out to the internet. Okay. The second would be, let's go back. Where is that? Here only. Strange. Ah, okay. What is the region? US Central one. Okay. Yeah. So if I have given you, oh, this will become a bit complicated for you guys. Let's take ABC that has only one subnet. Okay. Routes. I have a quick slides to explain you routes, but for now, please bear with me. Just because, yeah. So you need to select the region, okay, where your external IP addresses are running to see your routes. So I have just taken instance B, US South 1 is Dallas region. So I have selected that. And then what you say is you have two things to consider. One, these VPCs does automatically get a internet gateway, default internet gateway attached to it, right? So this subnet does support your hops, or this subnet does get attached to these internet gateways, and then your communication can be established to your external world, right? This gets automatically attached. You don't have to attach it. That's the reason why you see this default route and then the name. I'll show you on the routes also how we can do that. But if you know about the concepts of internet gateway, if you have used AWS, so you know the concepts of internet gateway. So these gets auto attached to your subnets. Okay. So you don't have to do this initial configurations by your side. So you can see the entire address is open for you. And then so how it works is, so this gets created along with your subnet, and now when you attach a external IP address to your boxes, these gets activated, and when you try to communicate outside, let's say I'll just show you also. If you try to do a curl on, let's say, www.google.com, you'll get a response back, right? So that is how this works over here in GCP. Any doubts on this? Quickly? Yes, no, maybe. Guys, any doubts?
No,
Okay. The others are also fine, right? And two persons who have joined today. If you have also doubts, please do let me know. Okay. Okay. So my VPC peerings are deleted. Yeah, that's the reason why it was communicating. So now let's try to do a ping. So now you can see it is not able to establish a communication. This is a live example of the use case that you will be getting. Okay. So what we can do is, there are two ways to do it. I'll just name the other term also. The first would be VPC peering. That's one. The second does GCP does give you is a shared VPC. I'll talk about shared VPC, but using shared VPC also we can establish this communication between two VPCs. But there are few restrictions, so that is the reason why I took VPC peering to show you the demo. So likewise, shared VPC also acts, but there is those restrictions. I'll let you know in the next part. Okay, now how can we solve this? So I was talking about VPC peering, right? So if you go to VPC network peering, so one more thing to just remember is it is a transitive. It's not a transitive. I would say it is an attach type networking. It works, right? If I tell you, if A to B, if you set up a network peering, the opposite has to be also set up. Means B to A network peering also has to be set up. Otherwise, the communication will not be established. So if you are setting up VPC A to VPC B, the opposite way of communication has to get also established. That is the only criteria that you need to follow it. Okay. I'll also ask you a question over here. It's, let's say I have a VPC A, a VPC B, and a VPC C. Okay. But I have my VPC C sitting in between VPC A and VPC B. Okay. If I just open up a notepad, it's A, C, B. Okay. So now let's think in by let's take this arrows. It will make up a bit complex. Okay. So now what I mean by is I have VPC A, VPC B, and VPC C. Okay. And VPC A has VPC pairing with VPC C, and VPC C has VPC pairing with VPC B. Okay. Now tell me whether my resources in VPC A, can it communicate with VPC B? Yes,
No,
maybe.
no.
Why?
No,
Why?
they cannot communicate directly because we don't have pairing with B.
Yes. So I know because this answer is coming from you too, because you have used this in AWS and you have thought that concept correct. Yes. But for the others, this is the functionality, or the only constraint that VPC peering has is it is non-transitive, right? Even if you this looks to be a linear type of connection, but until and unless they are directly connected, the communication cannot go through. So even if you see A to B and C, it looks to like a bridge to you, but the communication will never flow through it. So VPC peering is non-transitive, right? Okay. That is a question that gets asked mostly. Fine, let's go ahead. So create a VPC pairing. I'll name it for the naming convention AB. So AB means let's take A as default and BB the ABC VPC. Okay. Okay. But okay. Let's not think much about the naming conventions. But when you're doing it in industry level, please do follow the naming convention. Okay, so there has to be a source and a destination VPC, just like how I showed you in that notepad, A to C, right? So you have to mention what should be your initial source VPC. So if I'm giving it as default, right? So you can also give the first source VPC as the other VPC, ABC VPC. That's up to you, right? So now the important question comes is where is your peered network, right? Is it in the same project or is it in a different project? So you can select it accordingly. So for our example, I have it in the same project, right? So you can see the project name also, burner with my name, short name. And then you have to select your destination VPC. So it's ABC VPC, right? Then the IP stack, and then what is the exchange IP routes or routes that you want to do it. So there's one more advantage that it gives you is you don't have to give your CIDR ranges like how you need to put it in some other clouds when you use it. So if you just select these checkboxes that, hey, import my custom routes also that is defined in my VPC, it does that work for you. It will automatically import those when it is pairing up the VPC pairing routes. Okay, so go ahead and do that. Okay, there's one pointer, please do write it down or note it down, is this will not happen if you have the CIDR ranges clashing between two VPCs. Okay, the VPCs won't get established. So I had this typical example to show you. So that is the reason why I did not delete this, is that if you see the reason why it failed is you can also see that an IP range in the peer network 0.202 sorry 10.202.0.0 slash of 20 overlaps with an IP range in the local network with the same address, right? That is the reason why these peerings can fail, right? Please do take a note of the CIDR ranges of the VPC networks that you are trying to peer. Okay, otherwise these will not work. So I just wanted to show you this error message, so I kept this for you guys, right? So you understand, this is one again a thing to keep in mind when you are doing the pairing. Otherwise, how much you try, how much we scratch our head on why it is failing, we will never be able to do a pairing. Okay, please do once take a note of the ranges that is you are trying to pair. Okay, now I have spin up the VPC pairing part 1, right? So you can see it is showing inactive because I told you, even if it's not like that you have done the A to B connection, you have to also do it the other way around. B to A also has to be set up, okay? Because it is non-transitive. So I will do the other part of the equation quickly. So B to A, again source with change would be, it would now ABC for me. It's in the same project, so I'll give default VPC, import custom. If you want to export custom routes also, that's also fine. That depends on your use case. So just think about it when you're doing it. And now we are setting that the second VPC up, right? Okay, so my VPC pairing is now established. Okay, and let's say if I go into one, you can see your, it's a very much self-explanatory. It's default to ABC and ABC to default, right? If I go into one, what advantage you got is you can see the imported routes. This is the my VPC network or the CIDR that was lying in my ABC VPC, right? I just don't go into the terms of ABC VPC. Keep that aside. Just see the CIDR ranges got exported, right? Imported, right? This was my CIDR range for my VPC-B 10.89.0.0 series, and you see the next hop is Dallas region, and it got accepted, and all the other internal VPCs and all got exported also. These were the imported or exported routes from the default VPC network that I had, right? To just show you, you remember those network addresses, right? So ABC holds this 10.89 series, and the default holds the 9 regions with those subnet ranges of 128, 142, and 168, and so on, right? So these all got imported. Uh, Imported would be termed as that is taking it from the second VPC, and exported would be on the same part, right? So these all are now in. So now if I again go back and try to establish that communication, so now this should work, right? So you are getting those pings back. Okay, so this is a live example. What I wanted to show you, how you can solve the problem of one VPC resource to communicate with the second one, and this is extensively used when you're working in the industry. Okay, now let us come back to the boards once again. Let's close this. Let's come back to the PPTs once again. Okay, so VPC peering, we are mostly done with it. Now there's another term which I told you is shared VPC, right? So what do I mean by shared VPC? There is only one constraint in shared VPC. I'll tell you on a higher level first. Is for VPC peering, you can do it across cross organizations onto multiple projects holding under it, right? But if you, let's say if you have a criteria of only doing it inside a single organization, and just the projects under the single organization is changing, in that scenario you can use a shared VPC. Okay, so shared VPC is a single organization, but only the projects can change in between, and for that communication you can use a shared VPC. Okay, so there's a typical example that just what I told you is if you have this use case that your organization has multiple projects and you want resources in different projects to talk to each other, in that scenario, go ahead with shared VPC, right? And then again, there is again a few things that you need to follow when you are setting that up. Is there are two parts to that. One is a host project and one is a service project, right? So you have to define which will be your host project when you're setting this up, and then you also have to now add, once you have done that setting of your host project, you need to set up your service projects, right? And in that way these gets linearly accessed. And just another thing, these you might not be able to do it on your free account because it has to have a organization created, means the hierarchy has to get created. Okay, so first we have to set up the organization, and then on the folder levels, uh, next to the folder levels we have to have the projects created, because we are using mostly you guys are mostly using what I would say is free accounts or non-enterprise accounts. So organizations you might not be able to establish. So that's the reason, a reason why this setup you might not be able to do. But on an enterprise accounts, this you can do, right? Because they have their organization set. Only few things is in your folder level you have to give an I am role of shared VPC admin to the one of the your network team or your network group, and then they can take it forward in setting this up, right? So these are the two things that you can follow. I'll share the link of how you can set this up of shared VPC. You can just take a look on this. It's not much complex if you have understood shared VPC, sorry, VPC peering. It the logic works in the same way. Only one thing is you have to have this organization and folder structure already present for you, and the proper privileges has to be given up, right? Only this is the constraint over here. Okay, let's move on. Okay, then I wanted to talk about two other things, right? Two other things in sort of, let's say I have a networking communication to be built. As far as of now, we have only talked about the resources, communication or networking inside only our GCP project or GCP organizations, right? But now if you have a use case, let's say you want to communicate with your on-premise resources along with your GCP resources, right? Now, how can those communications be established, right? So this type of architecture is actually known as a hybrid architecture, because we include on-premise plus the GCP cloud side. So these are hybrid infrastructure. So GCP also does give you multiple ways or multiple services that you can utilize to set those up. So the first would be a cloud VPN, right? And there is another service known as the cloud interconnect. I'll come to individually to both of those. So what is a cloud VPN? Cloud VPN is when we try to connect our on-premise network to the GCP network using IPsec VPN tunnel, right? So using this IPsec VPN tunnel, we can utilize our or set up our network between our on-premise and GCP. Okay, but there is one thing that happens when we are using a cloud VPN is the in the traffic bit that traffic that is used for communication is not restricted to your internal GCP network. Okay, it does use the internet to establish or to pass your communications, right? So this is the one constraint that you get when you're using or setting up a cloud VPN, right? It uses internet access to establish your communication, right? And there are two types of cloud VPN solutions. Is a classic VPN and a higher availability VPN. So based on that, there are a few features that you get when you're using a classic VPN. You will have a SLA of 99.9% service availability and a single external IP address, right? So you will have only one single external IP address for your communications, right? But if you're using a HA, HA does give you two, so because it is a higher availability, you get two external IPs. So if one goes down, the traffic get routed to the second one, right? So you can see a couple of terms over here, known as a static routing and dynamic routing. So these are again what we actually do based on while we are setting up the routings. It can be of policy based or route based. What I mean by this, route based means you can define your next hops. I will show you routes. Routes is just you tell, okay, this is my source, this is my destination. Please take this source to my this destination. So this is what on a higher level routing means. So these can be defined, okay, when we are setting up the routings. And there's again a policy based. What do I mean by policy based is, let's say uh, resources which have these tags, let's say environment of production, please take this to these kind of resources to my VPN, right? Take this to my VPN. So this would be static policy based routings. But dynamic routings are much more easier to configure because you can use a BGP. BGP stands for Border Gateway Protocol. These are much more regulated, and I mean, you don't have to do much of settings into this of setting up. Yes, routes you do have to set up, but other than network privileges and network securities are taken care, and those static tag based or policy based routings or conditions you don't need to follow, right? These are a bit theoretical because these are mostly used when you have a bigger cloud infrastructure, and you have again the criteria of setting up a hybrid setup. Only then you need to set these things up, right? So you can for now know it on a high level basis. And also in GCP exams, cloud engineer exams, they don't go much deep into these topics, right? Because these are pretty advanced networking topics, okay? I just wanted to help you understand what this is and how does this work on a higher level. Okay, this is a typical diagram that just generally we set it up when we are working with these type of infra setup. Is you can see there are two parts to this equation. One is the GCP part and one is the on-premise part, right? So I'll quickly give you a high level. So this, let's say this is my GCP resource, cloud resource. I have it into my US West 1 region, and the sub and inside a subnet this is present. So now what we basically do it on a high level is, when you are using a cloud VPN, you set up the cloud VPN, right? This is the cloud VPN gateway that, and from there the traffic goes out to the internet, and it is now picked up by the on-premise VPN gateway that is sitting, that will again has to be configured by your side, the person who is maintaining the on-premise networking infrastructure, and the traffic goes inside your on-premise setup, right? So this is a typical scenario of how this thing works, right? So only two terms or two things fundamentally you need to, three I would say. One you need to look at and remember, I would say, is a cloud router. So we all know that we, for using our home Wi-Fi's, we also again need a router. So what does this router do? This helps in the hops and finding your use your next destinations, right? So that is the reason cloud also has its own internal routers. And the good thing is you don't have to manage this cloud router. So when I talk about cloud NAT, I'll show you this cloud router and how it works, right? So just think it of, it helps in the next route, providing or helping your resources to find your next route's destination, just like how a normal router works. Okay. The other parts, the two things we need to know and know, I would say, not much of remember, is the VPN gateways. So just like internet gateways we spoke about few minutes back, that was the final uh, exit point of our private networks to the internet. In these scenarios, this is the VPN gateway, right? And this traffic, to receive it from your on-premise side, I just have to know there is again a on-premise VPN gateway to take this traffic into your on-premise infra, right? And this happens, as I told you, on the internet. Uh, so this is what it typically looks like, right? Let's not go much deep into it. It's a more advanced topic. Okay, the other part to this is cloud interconnect. Okay, so what do I mean by cloud interconnect? Just it functions on the same fundamentals on what cloud VPN works, means it attaches or connects on premise with your VPC network, but there's only one good advantage that you get. It is that these communications happen internally. It happens in only through your GCP network. It does not go out in the internet. Okay, so actually the entire traffic communication is established via your internal IP addresses. Okay, so what, there are again multiple advantages you need to remember when you're using it. What you get is you get a high available and high throughput. There is very low latency, and you save much on the, you, I won't say much, because you save also your, or you reduce your cost on the egress traffic, because you are not using an external IP address. So you get to save your cost on that. But this is a much more costlier service that you get, right? Again, this has two parts to the equation. One is the dedicated interconnect and one is a partner interconnect. So dedicated interconnect, you can think it of at as this interconnect, cloud interconnect connections will only be used for your infrastructure, means only for your on-premise infra data centers and your cloud data centers. No other third party or no other external customers or clients can use your cloud interconnect. So these are a bit much more costlier, but you get very high throughput and very high configurations for it, because you can see the range of communication that it gives you, 10 Gbps to 100 Gbps. So these are mostly used by banks, I would say, because their data has to get much more secured. And there is another part to that is the partner interconnect has a 50 mbps to 10 gbps configuration, is that multiple other clients can take rents out of this. So these are mainly set up by Airtel, means if I talk about India examples, Airtel, Jio, Vodafone Idea, they do have these setups, and you can go out and take help of the help of those partners to set your cloud interconnects, right? So basically you are using their infra, they have their cables set up, so you can take help of them and use this, right? So this on the two major things that GCP also provide you for your on-premise to VPC communication. One would be the cloud VPN and the cloud interconnect. And the remembering things or the highlights that you want, if you want to remember, is on a high level, cloud VPN uses internet access for your communication, but cloud interconnect does not use it, right? Okay, there is one more thing that GCP does provide you, but it is not a recommended service, or is a direct peering. If you have known AWS, you know of AWS, so you know of AWS Direct Connect, right? So it works in the same way, but GCP does not. It's not a GCP service first of all, and it's not recommended also. So GCP does tell you. So please use Cloud Interconnect or Cloud VPN. So this might be a distractor question in your exams. Okay, so please do take a note. So I just wanted to highlight this. Okay, so there are again two other things that I want to also talk about, right? Because this is not there in my PPTs and I have to also update this, but this is also very much important at your working level, but they have not included it in their syllabus. So yeah, but so I will talk about that. Hold on. Let me go to the boards. Okay. Now, yeah, I want to talk about routes. So this is one of the major thing that people generally tend to forget, right? But this is one of the most important thing. Why? If I just give you a quick analogy example, in if you think about a private subnet and a public subnet in AWS, there is not much of a basic difference, right? Only the naming conventions, and that is how you identify it. Let's say I now change the naming convention of your private subnets and public subnets in AWS to, let's say, some arbitrary names, right? Now, how can you identify those subnets? Do you have an answer to that? Anyone? Hello?
No. Mm.
Yes or a no? Was it a no as an answer?
Yeah, no, we don't.
Okay, so that is where you need to understand the configurations, right? So that is the reason why I was showing you the internet gateways and all. So if the naming convention does change, so that now the configurations you have to remember. So I'll just tell you that and these. So for AWS, you need to remember that my private subnet is a subnet that is restricted to inside only inside my AWS's network, and those to communicate with my external world needs to be set up via a NAT gateway, and then the traffic from the NAT gateway will be passed to the internet gateway, and from there it will go out, right? But for my public subnets, the traffic will can directly go to my internet gateway and then to the external world, right? So this is on a configuration level that we can define between a private subnet and a public subnet. But when I say that the traffic goes from, let's say, my private public subnet to internet gateway, or my private subnet to NAT gateway, then to internet gateway, AWS or let's say any cloud provider will not be able to know that, right? That is what we know of. But how can we tell them that, hey, you need to follow this path, right? That is where these routes or route tables come into action, right? These help you to define how you want to take your traffic, from where you want to take your traffic to your next destination, the hops which I was telling you. So let's say it picks up from A. Now where to take this traffic? It take this traffic to B, but how to have that channel of communication established, and you tell the guys that, hey, this is how you need to do this, right? This is where these route tables help you, right? Am I clear on this? So next time when you get asked this question, please answer this in this way, right? With the help of route tables, NAT gateways, and internet gateways. When I also means when I take interviews out, and when I also ask these questions, people only give generic answers to, hey, this is my public subnet, this is my private subnet, right? So the next time when you are asked this question, please think it in this way, right? Let's have some technical answers to this question, so that also gives you a more clarity on the entire traffic or communication network that is set up behind you, right? So this is routes. uh, if I go with a generic definition, it means it defines the next hop of the network. Okay, it can be anything. It can be local to internet. It can be local or your instance to an other instance. It can be just like how I was mentioning that you when we are seeing that diagram, right? You were seeing that from my internal subnet, it is going to that VPN gateway, right? We can also define those sort of routing things, routing networks, right? Okay, before I go to the examples on the GCP screen, right? I think we are very close to uh, our time today, but let's finish the definition so that I can go into uh, the practicals when we start tomorrow. Okay, there is a cloud Okay, let's think of this use case. Now we'll take this use case tomorrow only. But for now, let me show you the routes that will give you a bit of clarity. Okay, so here you can see when you go to the VPC networks, right? There is again one more thing that you see left of your screen is your routes. So this is the typical place where you need to define your routes. So for few, you already get it defined because when I was telling you that you get your internet gateways assigned already when you define your public IP or external IP addresses is where you can see this. If you go to, if you want to check your existing routes, go to route management and you can see, right? I have 3 VPCs. So for those 3 VPCs, see, I do not have a resource for my test VPC, correct? Because if you see, I did not have a VM also for test VPCs, but GCP already has given you this internet gateway, right? So you can utilize this and this gets automatically attached. So if I just go into this, there are a few things that uh, just it's very self-explanatory, but I just want to show you is what type of route type that we already were seeing it into when we are seeing the hybrid cloud, right? There can be two ways. One is dynamic and static. So here they are following a static route. So mostly we do follow static routes only when we are only utilizing our GCP internal infrastructure. What is the type of IPs? What is the destination? And then what is the next hop? This becomes the critical part, right? So anything that is coming from on this network from let's say 0.0.0, it will get hopped into the internet gateway and from there it will go out to the internet, right? This is a typical example of an internet gateway hop. Now let's try to set up one of our own, just a quick one. uh, okay, there we have to do that via our VPC only. Because I have done the network peering, you can see the peering subnets are also the next hops are also taken up. So let's go to one of our VPC. Let's go to default ABC VPC. Scroll down to routes. Select your region of your VPC. It is Dallas for me. Where is it? Why am I not getting it? Uh, uh, 1 second. It's my VPC. Dallas management. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I just missed that. It's because I tend to use most every time on the class. I sometimes forget where that resides. Okay, so here is where you go to your routes, route management, and you can define your routes. Okay, go into your routes, put a name to it. Let's say my route VPN. So you select your network. That means your VPC, under which VPC you want to set that up. Then you if now this becomes the important part when if you want to do a static route or a policy based route. So if you want to do policy based route, so you have to have your Google API enabled for your VPC network. I do not have it enabled, so that's the reason it is not giving me the second option. But if you have that enabled, then you can also select your policy based routing when you are doing your trials or you are hand testing it. You can just do that and test it, right? And if you have any doubts, please do let me know tomorrow. Next is your destination. It can be the CIDR ranges that you want your hop to go into, right? So let's say take an arbitrary example for now. It's 10 dot series of 16 sub CIDR range or routing prefix. priorities is you need to define it again tends from just like your firewall 0 to 65535. 0 would be the highest priority and 65535 would be your lower ones. So it goes from bottom to up. Now there is again couple of advantages that you is given if you want to give means if you want your instance tags to be mentioned, you can select and do that. Means if you want those particular set of instances out of 10 instances, if you want those instances who have environment as production to take into consideration, you can set that up over here. And the most critical and the vital part is where do you want to take your next hop? Do you want to take it to the internet gateway? Do you want to take it to an instance? So if you want to take it to an instance, let's say I want to, if you are take an example of I do not want to take my routes directly to the internet. So I might keep a private VM and then I might keep a public VM, right? So I want my traffic to first come to my private VM. From there, it should go into a public VM and then to using an internet gateway, it should go out, right? So in that scenario, you can use a, let's say your next instance, right? You can, and this instance, if you have a external IP address, then it utilizes internet gateway and goes out. So this is a typical example what I told you. The others would be again a VPN tunnel, which we were again seeing into that example, right? From our private IP private IP resource, how we can utilize that HAVPN gateway. So this is how you can tell that machine to take up these VPN into your next hop, right? And you define your VPN tunnel that you have established. So this is typically where what I mean by routes and how do we mention hops. This is again the backbone to tell your network VPCs of how to do that communication, whether to go from A to B is very clear to him, but how to tell them that okay, you go from A to B, this is where you need to define it, and this is the basic definition that we need to also technically tell that when we are anyone has asked you this question of what is the difference between a public subnet and a private subnet. Let's not from now on, let's not define it in a very generic term based on naming conventions, right? Because I see most of us doing it. So yeah, this is what we need to follow. Okay, I am mostly done for today, and we are mostly covered have the networking part. Only there is one part to solve that I'll start from tomorrow based on a use case. That's also much more uh, a predominant one that you generally face, and that is also not much included in the GCP syllabus. But because I have used and faced it, I also wanted to share that with you. Okay, this is what I had for today. Any question, guys?
Yes,
I
Akash.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Akash, okay, in the GCP, okay, we have two options, okay. We need to connect with the on-prem network. Okay, one is for
Mhm.
VPN gateway, another one is for the cloud interconnect, okay. Which
Correct.
use case,
Yes.
okay, each use case, okay, we need to preferable for the VPN gateway, which use case we can use for the cloud interconnects. I have
Okay.
little confusion
Yes.
here.
Yes. Okay. So let's say uh, you have a data center on premise, right? But in that use case or in that scenario, let's say your client or your whoever you are working with does not have much means your data what you have stored, right? You don't have much constraint on that it on using the internet traffic, okay? That it can go means they have given you that facility that okay, I am okay with the uh, forefront of using the internet for traffic communication, right? And my data is not so much integrate or so much secure, should not be so much secured that I cannot use the internet. In those scenarios, you can go with internet or cloud VPN, right? And there's again another most advantage to use that is your cost is again into means there is a cost also when you are doing setting up any service, right? So the cost which you need to pay basically for a cloud VPN is much lower that than you what you need to pay when you are doing it with an interconnect. So that is also a consideration that industry does take when you are defining your RFPs and all. Okay. So there's a basically an what I mean to say is a trade-off, right? Whether you want to keep your data much more secured, or and then if that is a first tick, then you need to use an interconnect, right? But if you can do a bit of trade-off, okay, you can think of that, okay, my data is not has not do not to be so much secured, and it can travel a bit from my from the internet, and then you can secure it using also when your traffic is going into the internet, right? Just that's not like that someone can hack it, right? You can have it encrypted using your keys, right? So then there are other ways to also encrypt it, but yes, internet will be used. So in that scenario, we generally tend to use a cloud VPN. But for banking instances, what I have seen, they generally do not tend to go with cloud VPNs, because those data is much more intricate, right? And that has to be very much secured. So in that scenario, people do go with cloud interconnect. Yeah.
Okay. Cloud internet, okay, we can operate only for the internal IP address.
Yes, the communication will be only from internal IP address. There's no external IP getting utilized over there.
Okay. But in the cloud VPN, okay, we can use it for external IP address.
Yes, external IP, because it will go to your internet gateways, right? So there's
Yes.
again that
Yes.
example that I told you, right? There are two features. One is a static and is a dynamic. So you can see one, you get one external IP address, and for the other you get two. So yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, no issues. Any other question? I see a question on the chat. While we are doing peering, it IP address should not overlap, right? Yes, correct. So Shishir, that is the thing that I pointed that I also mentioned when I was showing the peering demo, and I also had a live failure that means when I generally did that use case to show you what is the exact error that you will be getting when those CIDRs will overlap when you are doing the peering, right? So when we kind of face that error, please don't panic and scratch your head. Now you know that what is the error, and you go back to your VPC subnets and check for the CIDR ranges and try to do a analysis, right? Whether those are matching or not, and then you take your next step. Yeah, that is how you can solve that. Yes. Any other question, guys? If I think any other questions? Yes, no, maybe. I think no is an answer. So just before I leave you guys, please do practice your hands-on, right? And come up with questions, because until and unless we do hands-on, we face the issues, we won't be much confident. That is one thing. Okay. You will definitely know today or tomorrow. If you have joined in, you will know that, right? But the confidence is required of you doing it on your own hands. That is what I try to give out to you guys, because until and unless you do it on hands-on, you won't have that means confidence. Okay? Please do it hands-on and face those challenges. You can do anything because that's your free account, right? Do anything, and you face challenges and you try to solve them. Okay. Okay, then. If you don't have any questions, let's drop off for today and connect back tomorrow. Thank you, guys. Have a good day. Bye bye.